Hey everybody, welcome back to the Quality Remarks podcast. My guest today is an award-winning icon in the software testing world. She's been a coach, a consultant. She's a regular speaker at all sorts of international conferences. She puts on amazing workshops on the human side of testing, as she calls it, and development as well, which we're going to talk about. She's produced loads of content, which you should check out, and we'll post to where to get to later. Webinars, articles, podcasts, as well. Which I want to ask her about a little later. Is she edited The Gift of Time, which is a book of essays celebrating the life of Jerry Weinberg. So, welcome to the QR podcast, Fiona Charles.
Thank you, Keith.
And I just joined your ranks this year. If I can blow my own, I got the European Testing Excellence Award as well. I think you're a previous winner of that.
I am. Yes. Congratulations. It's great, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. It was actually, I was very unexpected. I was very, very humbled and honored by it. So the first thing I wanted to ask you about is, with my fanboy hat on, I'm Jerry Weinberg and the book that you edited with him, just to kind of get that right out of the way, out of the box. Did you spend much time with him? Because I know a few folks have, but did you get to meet him and hang out with him or talk
Oh
to him
yeah.
at least?
Yeah. And if you read my blog, which I write on very infrequently, there's a series of I think three posts where I talk about our friendship
Hmm.
after which I wrote very shortly after he died. Um, we traveled together a certain amount because he would drive from Albuquerque to Phoenix for the AYE conference.
Oh, wow.
And
Okay.
as his health got a little shakier, that was a little bit more problematic. And at one point, I can't remember what year, I offered to do the drive with him. And he hummed and hawed and humph. And then the next thing I knew, as I said in the blog post, it was a vacation. We were going on a vacation. And so what would normally be a day or two's drive became a 4-day drive each way.
Oh, wow.
And we did that for
And if people
I
don't know,
can't.
what was AYE again?
It was a conference called Amplifying Your Effectiveness,
Okay.
and Jerry was one of the major hosts. It was organized and put on by students of his who were themselves consultants. So people like Joanna Rothberg
All right. Okay.
and Esther Derby, Don Gray, Naomi Carton.
Okay.
So it was a very cool conference, and it was a 3-day conference at which all the sessions were intended to be experiential workshops,
Okay.
and it's where I learned to do workshops.
Yeah, I want to talk to you about that later as well because I suck at them and I'm pick your brain for that. But like my always suspected. So I never got to meet him. Obviously read most of what he's written a lot anyway, outside of the kind of fiction stuff. But yeah, and I interviewed him the one time for this actually, and we had a really long conversation that like a lot of it wasn't recorded because I published because I couldn't use it because it was like him walking away to go answer the phone for a while, taking the dogs barking things like that. So it was a great conversation.
Right.
I listened to that bit, but there's an extended cut that's not out there.
Right.
But I always felt like, I mean, he always seemed to be like in the testing community when I became really aware of him, kind of like a grandfatherly figure, like that. But I always suspected like when he was younger or maybe when he was doing these workshops, there was a very straight talking kind of like tougher tone to some of the comments that he made that like I think some people miss about him. Now, am I wrong about that, or is that
Oh,
because
not
he
at
he
all.
seemed pretty tough?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Um, yeah, and one of the essays in Gift of Time was written by his wife,
Mm.
Danny, and she talks about how she accompanied him to a reunion dinner of the people who'd worked on the space project with him, and how she saw a totally different side. Here was the tough project manager.
Right. Yeah, and I think like some of the things like I reread, probably every year Secrets of Consulting, and I think, those lessons like which I always tell people to read. That's probably just in life in general. Forget about, software testing or consulting really. Um but those lessons in there, like particularly as we always quote the people problem one, like that's born out of like hard lessons. That's not like a soft edged,
Oh,
oh,
absolutely not.
people have soft, blurry, fuzzy, it's more like, no, they're actually an actual problem.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, and to a large extent, that's become my mantra. I mean, probably I should go back and say my first encounter with Jerry Weinberg's work was in my very first job in tech.
Mm,
I started in 1978 as a technical writer. It was a summer job at my university's library automation company. And I was hired because I knew nothing whatever about computers, but I could write. And uh, and that was what the guy who hired me, Charles Cohen, wanted. And my very first day on the job, I mean, I walk into this place, it's just wow. And Charles wasn't even there, and he arrived a little later, and he dropped on my desk a copy of the Psychology of Computer Programming, and he said, "If you want to understand the people you're going to be working with, you really need to read this book." And then he said, "And I hope you've brought your library card because you need to go to the computer science library and find out how to do this job."
what a random thing, like, and that was your introduction to Jerry's work. So then how did you like get to meet him? Like how did you connect? Was it through the community, or did you just reach out to him through reading his stuff, or
PSL,
okay,
Problem
yeah,
Solving Leadership, which was a workshop that Jerry designed with, I don't want to get this wrong, but with Gene McClendon and his wife Danny.
okay.
It's still running. It's a 1 week workshop, essentially a week. And I mean, I had kind of gone away from some reading some of his work, and then when I became uh, much more involved in software quality and stuff in the company I worked with, which was producing a manufacturing execution system for semiconductor manufacturers. I started going back to his work and reading things like how to do walkthroughs and inspections and the series the 4 volume quality software.
Yeah, I have that. I've got the
Uh,
hard copies.
I have a shelf here
Yeah.
of Jerry's books. Um, but it never occurred to me. I mean, I didn't even know he was still alive. It didn't occur to me that I could meet him. And
Right.
then I ran into James Bach at a conference in Toronto, software quality conference in Toronto, and we were chatting, and I said something about Jerry Weinberg, and he uh, indicated that I could find out about him and meet him, so I looked online and read about the problem solving leadership workshop, which to me just sounded fabulous. But I couldn't possibly afford it, so I needed my company to send me, and I talked them into it, and I also sort of saw it as kind of a 50th birthday present for me. So so that was in 2001,
Okay.
and I was there in the PSL class when the famous or notorious PSL class when 9/11 happened.
Mm. Oh wow, okay.
So
Good Lord.
it's particularly memorable for me, as I'm sure it is for everybody who was in that class.
Good grief. And like PS, I never had the opportunity to do that. I mean, and I know I think just from my connection to the context-driven community, that was a big thing for people to go do, and pretty much everybody was in there, despite there's not much of that community left. Um, People have done that. Was that worthwhile to you? Did you feel like the P I always Michael always tells me, "Oh, you should go do that. You'd love that. It's exactly, the kind of thing you'd want to do." Did you take away much from it?
It blew me away.
Mm,
It really did. I mean, for a number of reasons. Um, I was lucky enough to have both Jerry and Naomi Carton
mm,
as the instructors that week. Um, and of course it was all about the human side of software development. It was about learning to solve problems collaboratively, working with a group to do that.
right.
It was And of course, there is so much more to solving problems than actually tackling the problem.
Mm.
First, you have to understand what the problem is, whether there is indeed a problem, and all of that. So it was very much a questioning of assumptions and a poking at beliefs.
Mm.
Uh, the day of 9/11, which was um, I guess it was day two of the formal part of the workshop. I mean, we went into class, and of course, I was one of the two non-Americans in the class. The other
Okay.
was a Belgian woman, and of course, we were somewhat removed from the shock and the I guess the sense of personal violation that all of the American
Right.
members of the class were feeling. Um, and Jerry, both Jerry and Naomi were really stabilizing
Mm.
influences. I mean, one of the first things Jerry said was, we need not to start jumping to conclusions about all of this. This
Right.
could just as easily be some guy from out there who doesn't want to pay his income tax.
Right.
And that was very much his, as it emerged, of course, it wasn't just some homegrown guy,
Right.
but it was very much his approach to the whole thing. We need to step back and examine what's really happening and think about our own reactions to that.
Right. And is that, I mean, do you feel like that's kind of when I asked him what the biggest misconceptions people had about his work. And he had some interesting things to say about that. But like my biggest takeaway from his work is always the people side to it. That really informed kind of like the rest of it was a defining moment for my career, really, to like view things through a perspective of not just a technical problem, but continually redefining it as a people problem that's
Yes.
using technology in some aspect. Do you have like a, here's my top takeaway from, Jerry, or the getting to work with them or any of that training?
Well, I guess the number one thing is that it is a people problem, and from the start, because I started as a technical writer, I think that also helped. That because my job was to make things as clear as possible
Right.
for other people to read.
There's going to be lots of people listening going like, what was a technical writer? What is,
Yeah.
what did they do?
Okay. There I was writing instructions for other people about how to use computer programs that I had to learn about first
Right, right.
and really explore.
It's a lost art.
It is. And so reading psychology computer programming
Mm.
really helped, I think, to orient me to that people side. And I came out of that job. My next job was, well, I had another boring technical writer job after that where I didn't get to invent the job. That was no fun. But then I got a tester job after that where I got to invent the job, and that was a lot of fun. Um, I came out of that job with a real concern for people who use software
Right, right,
and people who make software.
right.
I mean, that was an incredible environment in which to do it because we had at that, that was 1978. There weren't very many computer science grads around. There were lots of physics people,
Mm.
uh, but also we had an Egyptologist. We had a composer of electronic music. We had people from
Right,
all kinds of places. I came out of English, and there were lots of people from the humanities.
right,
Um, so it was a very different world, and it was and I retained that sense of people focus coming
right.
coming out of that job and going into other jobs. And of course, the work with Jerry and classes with Jerry really reinforced that. The other thing that I really took out of PSL was uh, the value of experiential learning.
Mm.
I hadn't encountered that kind of teaching and that kind of learning before, and it was wonderful.
Right,
I've just found that I really thrived in that environment, and I wanted more of it, which
right.
is why I started going to AYE. I wanted more of it, and eventually I wanted to learn how to do it as well.
And where do you get that? I mean, two things. Like one, like where do you get that now? right? Because that's not, we'll see what happens at ATD because there's a whole collection of people that I want to talk to this year over in Germany, and I know you're giving a workshop there, which I'm not attending, but we'll talk about that a little bit. Well, like where do you go to get that? Because I feel like those kind of like the conferring conferences and that kind of workshop, like experiential learning, is like I don't know where to get that anymore. I mean, like it's not at conferences, and I haven't seen really any great training in a while. Where would you go to get that other than obviously hiring
Interesting.
yourself to do a workshop?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I still do workshops, and I'm not sure. I mean, I would have said cast. I haven't been at cast for a long time. Um,
Yeah, me neither.
Mostly because I haven't wanted to go to the US, and now I
Me
really don't
neither.
want to go to the US. Um, uh, Gee, I mean, I can't say offhand.
Right.
The other place actually where it was where that became a really wonderful, um, rich, growing environment and an environment in which to do experiential workshops was Let's Test.
Mm, yeah, I don't think that's
Um,
running anymore either, though, is it?
no, it's not. It's not. But I think that conferences come and go.
Right.
And they have their natural life and then they wind down, and that's probably just as well because like television programs, they become boring as they
Right. Or very like insulated in terms of the same speakers and the clickish and things like that. That's why
yeah,
I kind of go in and out of them for a while. I'm starting to do a little bit more again these days. And,
yeah,
the other thing the part two that was really like just like you said something that really struck a chord with me was that the thing you brought took away from that job was caring about people who are using software
yeah,
and the people who built it. And I feel like there's like just a coarsening of like and I wrote a little about this the other day about just kind of the endless release cycle and pushing things out and continual
yep,
everything has just you used to care about like what you were doing to your users and there was like some moral hazard with what's going on and it's do you think that's just gone now because sometimes you feel there's a Sisyphean feeling to caring about quality these days that like it's just not important to people anymore and what's important is to just try and slam stuff out is that are we am I just living in a different era in my head hoping for it to change back or what do you think?
well, I mean there are two sides to it, I guess. I'm not in the trenches anymore, right? I'm not working on software projects, so I can't really speak to just how awful it is to be out there trying to build software and test software, although I've
It's pretty
certainly,
bad.
yeah, I certainly hear other people's stories, and I'm very much in touch with those people. But as a user, my God, software is getting worse and worse.
Mm,
Um, and I mean, even simple things like spell check. Somebody decided to inject AI into that, and it's never worked properly since. Uh, it's, in Microsoft Word, you used to be able to enter your spelling of a particular thing a couple of times, and it would remember it,
right.
and you could add to the dictionary. No more.
Yeah.
Now it just goes on correcting you wrongly forever and ever and ever. I,
Yep. And
I don't.
suggesting really long part sentences and it's
Yeah,
it's getting a little out of control.
yeah. Somebody decided to take Excel apart, I think, and reconstitute it, and now it's very difficult to do simple things like conditional formatting.
Mm,
Because now you have to figure out a whole new way of constructing the formula.
right.
So I don't get it. It's like and of course it's like the inmates are in charge. And but I think it's not the inmates. I think it's young people who perhaps haven't had much in the way of training about people
Right.
and and much experience
Yeah.
of what other people are experiencing with their software.
I really feel for people coming up in this business now because they don't know any different to the continual everything mind frame. And I think a lot of the core principles around kind of building quality software are becoming lost arts, and some of that is just like, and I don't want to be, an old man, shaking his fist at a cloud, what I mean, but like I really like a lot of the problems that I see in software projects that are happening today. The roots aren't any different than they were when I started in this business, and yet we're trying to solve the problems completely through technology, and then just speeding things up. It's like we can't help but build crappy software, so we have to be able to back it out really quickly or do point releases really quickly, which just gets in this endless enshittification cycle that you can't get out of. um
And we're not really caring about risk.
no.
Uh, Not even necessarily acknowledging that some software is more risky than others. I mean, I guess there are a couple of things. One thing that I've observed that I find puzzling in a way. One is a few years ago I started doing, well, let me back up. I was reading The Guardian one morning, as I do online, over breakfast, and I read a piece that said by some people that they just created this wonderful piece of whiz-bangery that it was a piece of AI software. This is a while ago that could determine whether a person was gay or straight by looking at their photograph. And my jaw hit the table. And I thought, first of all, who would do such a thing?
Mm,
Like, why? Why would you do that? Why would you not understand the horrible
mm,
potential impacts of something like that? The risks of
right.
putting that software in the hands of some repressive regimes,
Mm,
uh, it just blew me away. So then of course I started seeing articles about dysfunctional software all over the place. It might be predictive policing. It might be simple non-AI related software failures, like of course the big thing with the UK post office software,
mm,
the
mm,
big thing with the Canadian payroll system, federal payroll system,
right.
which still isn't fixed after many, many, many years, and it will eventually be replaced, but has cost billions and has caused horrible impacts to people not getting their proper paychecks and not meeting their mortgage payments and who knows what.
Yep.
Similar impact government projects all over the world, introducing enormous systems that have done real damage to real people. And I started constructing keynotes about this and talking about them at conferences. And the thing that really blew me away was that in a lot of cases, I was delivering news, real actual news to people because they didn't know.
Right.
People who were testing software had no idea of the real damaging impact that software could have on people's lives.
Yeah.
And in many cases, people thanked me, and in other cases, it was like, "Oh, go away."
Right.
Um, so that was one thing that I just find really concerning. And of course, we can go back to, of course, it's a people problem.
Right.
Um, but the other thing is that I think I and there's a bunch of reasons why I didn't get to do the talk I intended to do at Agile Testing Days, and it had to do with Keynote crashing on my computer in the middle of at the
Oh
beginning of a keynote.
no, really?
Um, and I ended up mistakenly giving a previous bringing up the slides for a previous keynote because
So
they
wait,
were
so
there on
the
my
one you
memory
were gonna
stick.
give, didn't work. You brought up another one mistakenly, and then gave the second keynote.
Yeah, I talked the
That's
second
great.
keynote. I talked the one I intended to do over the slides of the one I hadn't intended to,
That's fantastic.
because there was some commonality in the slides.
Sure,
I mean,
sure.
a fair
Yeah,
bit of
that's great though. That's like really like battlefield experience.
commonality.
Go to the keynote with the slides you got, you know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly. That I can actually make happen on the screen. Um, but the thing that I ended that keynote that I intended to do, I called it human impact.
Mm,
And I ended it by saying, here are the agile principles. But there's a principle that is missing for me. And I think it's really important. And the principle is that human impact is above all.
Mm.
And that's what I think is missing from a lot of what's going on in software.
Hard agree with that. Absolutely.
People are not considering the human impact. And I think that if you look at the agile principles, and they're great in their way, but they're really designed for the people creating software to have a nice life. And
Absolutely.
there's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah.
But
To me,
but it's not the be all and the end all of creating software.
I always say the Agile Manifesto is the biggest technology case study in the law of unintended consequences in the history of technology. I mean, what has grown and built off of what exactly as you described is an ideal world for people building software turned into this gigantic thing of rituals and consultancy and everything else on top of it that is completely antithetical to the original principles. It's just amazing that that whole industry grew out the top of it. But to your point, I see it every day working through our internal and external services with this AI stuff that's going on right now, and I'm just going to call it stuff. That there is no consideration at all being given to the human impact of what's being built or what could be done with that. I think it's just completely thrown out the window. And what you see with uh, yeah, I'm very working in investment banking my whole career. I'm very skeptical about regulations and what their actually impact's going to be. But you actually see now people saying, "Oh, we're not going to govern AI or any of this." Government saying this, the country I live in right now being a prime example, because we want to encourage investment. And the UK just like ranked like below Mexico on the amount of IPO friendly economic environment. So they're
Yes.
basically just saying, go for it here. You want to do stuff, go for it. And the impact to that at the human level is just phenomenal what's going to happen there. It's
Yeah,
so far reaching.
it's staggering.
Mm,
But the other thing, and this is not about AI, is that because software is running the world, I mean, it's everywhere. It's in your tennis club membership. It's just it permeates every aspect of your life. An awful lot of people are working on an awful lot of trivial software. And I say trivial advisedly because by that I mean software that doesn't matter a damn.
mm,
Like, who cares? And that really disturbs me too.
mm.
I want to go out and I feel like an elderly curmudgeon, and I am. But I want to go out and say to people, work on something that matters.
Right.
Work on something that really is going to make a difference to people's lives.
Yeah.
Forget the games, forget the trivial stuff. I There is software out there that could kill people
Yeah.
if we don't get it right. Go out there and work on it
Yeah. Or
and
or
make sure
not.
that it doesn't hurt people. Do your
Yeah.
best, you know?
Yeah. I,
I
Yeah, because IT is filled with this mentality of it after the horses have left the barn, about ethics, about risk, about it. They just start building stuff and then they go, "Oh, wait a minute, you were going to use that inappropriately, or you had ill intent, or somebody bought that up and is now I don't have access to it." They're constantly complaining about ethics and risk after it's already built and done. There's no constraints on what people are doing whilst these things are in ideation, or while they're literally trying to figure out what to build, or while they're building it. And
Yeah.
I want to talk to you a little bit about kind of ethics and whistleblowing a little bit later. But I want to, like, what we were talking about kind of ties into another thing I wanted to ask you about is, you very you're speaking right about like the human side of testing. I think we've kind of covered that, but there's also another, like, what you mean by that. But there's another side to this, is like people skills or kind of working in projects. Do you like are there some like core skills that you think people should work on to develop that side of looking at the human side to things or relating to people within projects?
For sure. Communication is the obvious one. And by communication, I don't just mean speaking clearly or writing clearly, I mean listening.
Mm,
So both sides of communication, I
yeah,
think, are absolutely key. Collaboration, how to
yeah,
work with other people in a harmonious environment in which you can have safe conflict.
right,
So certainly the whole thing about having a safe working environment and understanding what that means. It doesn't mean avoiding conflict. It doesn't mean, that everybody's cozy and comfortable. It means that you can actually speak out
right,
safely. You can say when you think is something is wrong.
right.
So that for sure. I would
Yeah,
add learning.
actually, on that, I want to ask you something because I talked to, I know you know Ash Hinier, and
Yes.
we talked about kind of the death of performative DEI, and maybe that's a good thing with like in the wake of the last election in the U.S., all those companies getting rid of their DEI programs, and I've always felt that a lot of it was performative. The amount
Yeah.
of DEI boards panels I sat on as a middle-aged, white dude was ridiculous. You know what I mean? It's like
Right.
I am the problem. I know how I can help solve the problem, but I'm basically the problem. Um, and in terms of like conflict resolution, you know, there's there. I'm trying to phrase this the right way. Is that do you think that there's an opportunity because there used to be like scrutiny and conflict and like being able to critique things. I feel like that's receded a little bit, maybe appropriately where it's there's a clear line delineation between bullying and just browbeating people and being coercive in your views as opposed to a good healthy conflict resolution debate. And it seems to have pushed way towards the other way where like we don't discuss things anymore because people are afraid of being categorized as a bully or all the different diversity of types of people you have to take into consideration. Is that what's like a healthy balance between those two? Because I've seen people that look like and act like and think like me receding from that, and those conversations are back behind doors and back into rooms where they used to be, whereas there's a kind of pullback from that. Dude, I don't know if I'm being exactly clear what I'm trying to ask you, but like where's the line between those things that people can get back to healthy conflict?
I honestly don't know, but I think it has to be
Did that
not
make any
excluding.
sense what I just said?
Yeah, it has to be not excluding anybody, including the straight white guys.
Right.
It has to be that we're all in this.
Thank goodness.
And
Because
and
we've been depressed for too long.
but it's and oppressed, of course.
Yes.
Uh, but it's I don't know, how can we get to acceptance?
Yeah.
And some of it has got to be about teaching people conflict resolution
Mm,
skills and negotiation skills,
right.
teaching people how to say a healthy no,
Right.
which is a workshop that I've done and that that Jerry did. I don't
What,
know.
what do you mean by that? A healthy for people listening? What do you mean a healthy no?
Learning to say no when that's the right answer for you.
Right.
So it's not about refusing everything. It's not about refusing things aggressively, but it is about saying no. I can't take on any more work because this is what I have.
Mm,
What would you like me to do instead?
right.
Um, and that kind of thing. It's about ethics,
Mm,
about not violating your own values because you're frightened.
right.
And there's a lot of fear. There always has been a lot of fear in people's working lives. I remember just and this is kind of a trivial example, but people saying, "Oh, it would be so much better if we could just get some training," and you say, "Well, ask for it." "Oh no, they won't give it to us." Well, how do you know?
Right.
How do you know they won't give you what you need? Why are you so afraid to ask? Why are you so afraid to push back? And often people fear horrible consequences because they haven't stood back and done a rational risk assessment for themselves.
Right. Yeah,
Uh,
and
more of a
answer the
given
question before
situation.
it ever they before they ever ask it. They
Yeah,
already
out of fear.
know. Yeah. Yeah. So you're a bit like me, where you've worked across a bunch of different industries. You were a consultant, you're an employee, you've worked in, at IBM for a while, you've worked in, done some public sector stuff, and it's called kind of enterprise tech. You know what I mean? For these types of things, what do you think, like, trans in all of your different experiences, what things have you seen in dealing in these situations kind of transcends industry or technology, so for people who are, working in these different environments, like core skills like that, kind of the human centric stuff, what do you think is like kind of transcends these different environments?
I don't think the core skills are much different.
Yeah.
I think that you may need some specific skills in specific environments.
Mm,
If you're working in enterprise and the thing that I was most involved in the latter part of my career was big systems integration testing. So, where you might be taking anywhere up to 50 or 60 applications and getting them to talk to each other for some new feature or new venture. Um, that's not likely to be a core skill
right.
for many people, although you learn a lot from it about how systems work
Right.
and about how people who maintain systems work.
Yeah.
Uh, it was very interesting sometimes going into a place where they were integrating a whole lot of systems and finding that many of those systems had been running for so long that nobody knew anything about them except the people who were very directly involved, and there was no documentation whatsoever.
Mm.
No data diagrams, no no architectures.
Yes, it's all war.
Yeah, yeah. So I no, I don't think I think the core skills are very much the same. The
Mm,
core skills of communication, of the thinking skills.
right.
And that's the other thing. And Maria Cadamo wrote a very nice blog post the other day, which you might have seen, on how testing is not about a whole lot of other things. It's about thinking.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
thinking is what informs what we do.
No,
Uh,
that's a great post. Yeah, I did read that one. She's fantastic.
yeah, she really is.
Mm,
So I don't think that's any different.
yeah.
I think that for I wrote it made me go back to a piece that I wrote for the Eurostar 25th anniversary little book that they did, which I called Diversify Your Thinking,
Mm,
where I was talking about how, there are very different thinking skills, whether they're analytic or creative or synthetic or whatever. And testers need to be able to see, need to be able to analyze. They also need to be able to see a big picture. They need to be able to create
yeah,
in terms of their approaches. Um, and there are lots of structured ways of thinking that
yeah,
it's good to learn.
yeah,
It's good to learn how to do mind maps, but don't limit yourself to doing mind maps because mind maps are hierarchical.
yes,
And you don't always want to be thinking or approaching a problem in a hierarchical way.
yeah,
You might want to look at De Bono and
right,
and look at the six thinking hats or
right,
or or the five whys technique or whatever. And you might also want to go way above that into frameworks like systems thinking and Kinevin.
yeah,
So to me, that's a core skill for testers because everything else you do comes out of your
yeah.
ability to think.
The
It's a stem cell.
annotations, you're making my job really tough on the annotations for this blog post, all the things I got. Because I was just thinking in my mind, I was like, I what are your like because your go-to stuff like for resources for people to read, or to research. Like for me, I always say like learning to talk to a business. I always
Yeah.
recommend Harry Collins' book, The Rethinking Expertise, where it talks
Okay.
about expertise on a continuum and you like where you intersect with that, and it's a little bit of his kind of trading zones mentality as well, but like it pulls some of that in there, like how to talk to people about what you're doing on their terms and kind of doing that translation. What do you have like some top recommendations for reading about communication skills?
Um, I don't know. I mean, I think there are a lot of things much more current than the
Hmm.
things that I would recommend.
That's
So, I mean, I would still look
Michael sends me books that were written like 30 years ago all the time. So
yeah, but you know what? Nobody reads anything that's more than 3 weeks old,
that's unfortunate.
I think. Well, I think it's unfortunate. But I would look at Jerry Weinberg's work. I would look at Naomi Carton's work.
Okay.
She wrote some really good stuff on communication. I'm just looking at what they might be, but it's hard to pick a book off a crowded shelf and then read it from here. Um, uh, there is really lots of good stuff about communication.
Okay.
Um, and lots of stuff about dealing with conflict. Lots of stuff about negotiation. The Harvard Negotiation Project, which is quite old at this point. There were three books. One of them, I think the first one was called Getting to Yes,
Okay. Yeah, sure.
and then there was the Power of a Positive No, and I can't remember what the third one was called. It was up there somewhere. Um, but all of those are terrific sources.
Okay. I'll list them out in some of the other. You ran through like about five other things as well when you were talking there. So like in your workshops, I know you're doing the one over in at ATD in Germany. I think are you partnering with Ashley or who
No, with Anne Marie,
with
sure
Anne
am.
Marie? That's right. That's right. Okay, Anne Marie's going to be there. So content wise for a workshop because I've tried to run some. I'm great at giving like I like small group stuff, you know what I mean? But like the build what in your mind makes a good workshop? Because like I don't feel like I do good workshops. I've attended very few that I think actually are good. But like what's your like top tips for putting together a workshop? How do you prep for them? Do you like game them out, run them for small test audiences, or like how do you put together a workshop?
Uh, it depends on what I'm trying to teach.
Okay.
If it's a human skills workshop, um, if it's something like learning to say no, or I used to do one I could still do it, but that I started the first time I did it, I called it Speaking Truth to Power.
Mm,
And then, but that wasn't going to sell at any conference other than Cast. So nobody's going to send their pay extra to send their people to
right.
to that. So then we called it Delivering Difficult Messages.
Mm,
Um, the one thing that to me characterizes a successful workshop is interaction.
right.
And uh, the second thing, though, is the ability, the providing opportunities for people to consolidate knowledge, consolidate what they've learned and share it.
Okay.
So it's really important to build debriefs into your workshop that can be as long in duration as the exercises themselves.
Okay.
And I would say that the third thing, and this I learned from Jerry for sure. Actually, those things I learned from Jerry as well. Um, is don't expect and don't guide a workshop to a preordained conclusion.
You meaning
Because,
even including the topic or like
well, yeah, I mean, of course, if people go way off topic, you want to bring them back. But unless there's so much energy there that that's a better topic for the workshop.
right.
And that's something that's also a very important principle, which is follow the energy.
Mm,
Um, the other thing is, I've seen other people do workshops where they put up a whole lot of slides and they do a lot of talking themselves. I try not to talk very much.
Hmm.
I want other people to talk. I want the people who are there to bring out what they know. If I'm not learning in a workshop, why the hell am I conducting it?
Right,
Right.
right. Hmm.
So I want people to share what they know and to discover as they're going. Uh, I wrote a piece, it's on my blog, called How to Evaluate a Workshop.
Okay.
And that really talks about what I think the important characteristic of characteristics are of a good workshop. Um,
When what kind of like because the I just did one at the the test bash down in Brighton. I participated in part of a longer day called the Leading with Quality bit. And so what I was talking about was they asked me to do a workshop about was um getting a seat at the table. Like how if you're in testing, how do you get a seat table? But the interesting part that I think I want to do it again was I literally wrote up 3 case studies from actual projects with clients that here's the information I was given that was presented to me and then gave it to them and said, what would you do? Here's what they asked me to do. What would you do? How would you go about approaching this task, essentially?
right.
And then I actually told them because they were done, the project's done, what I did, and
Mhm.
then what happened.
Right.
And that was probably spurred the most interesting conversation out of anything. What do you do like hands-on wise for workshops? Do you like what kind of exercises do you do, or would you recommend some?
Well, it really depends on the workshop.
Yeah,
For learning to say, no, actually, let's go back to the speaking truth to power. I didn't take anything into that other than a structure for
right.
doing the work. So it consisted of having, first of all, having people identify scenarios they wanted to work on, and then setting up those scenarios um, in such a way that uh, the people watching who were not participating in the scenario knew everything that was going on, but the people who were actually doing it didn't.
Okay.
So they had to discover
Yeah.
and figure out ways of handling what they were doing. Um, so that's one technique.
Okay. Have you ever met anybody, either through your workshops or your work, who's untrainable? Which is to me, which is that's been said about me sometimes. I'm a horrible employee, so I mean, untrainable.
Not get IBM to fire me, and I tried really hard.
I've tried a few times too, and it's
In the
not
end, I
as
had to
easy as
walk
it
because
looks.
they just weren't going to pay me to go away. In the end, I had to walk. uh, no, I think that, and this is again something I learned from Jerry and from that whole AYE community, is people will learn what they're ready to learn
Yeah.
when they're ready to learn it. So when conferences ask for learning objectives, what are people going to come away with? I don't know what the hell they're going to come away with,
Yes.
frankly. I can say what they're going to be given the opportunity to learn.
Yeah.
If they're up for it, that's great. If they're
Yeah.
not, no. I mean, it doesn't happen. So sure, there probably are some untrainable people, but how on earth, they succeed in their careers, I don't know.
Yeah. I do always laugh about that when the conference asks you to what key messages they're gonna, or takeaways. And my takeaway, like Eurostar, when I did the keynote a couple years ago, one of the main takeaways was as a native English speaker, he needs to slow down. Like half the people couldn't keep up with my rapid. I was just like, that's a fair enough. That's a key takeaway. For me anyway, I need to. But you're right. You can't predict what people are gonna learn.
Oh, you can't. And particularly when you're doing a workshop particularly when you're doing a workshop. And there are always people who didn't read the abstract or didn't understand, who uh, did not come preparing to participate. They
Yes.
sit there and have you pour things into their shell-like ears. And I'm sorry, I don't have, a golden stream of words to pour into your ear. And I mean, the very first time I did an experiential workshop by myself, and it was kind of a fool's step out into the thin air. I was a Eurostar conference in The Hague. I think it was 2008, but I can't remember. Where the topic of the conference was the future of software testing. Well, come on, the future of software. How the hell do I know? And what a boring topic. So what I proposed for it, and it was my first international conference, what I proposed was the future of software testing is ours to make. And I
Right.
was just proposing a talk. Anyway, the conference chair called me up, program chair, and he said, "How would you like to do that as a half-day tutorial?" And I said, "Wow, I would love to."
Mm.
So what I did, I constructed a workshop, experiential workshop, and I had people. I can't remember all the things we did, but one of the things we did was each person kind of decided where they thought they'd like to be 10 years from now or 5 years from now. And then to participate in a job interview or an interview for a consulting gig as that person
Oh,
with those skills. So I had them
right.
in groups of three interviewing. So there'd be, the interviewee, the interviewer, and an observer, and then they switched around and we did all of
Right,
that.
right.
And then the final exercise was to have them draw how they were going to get there. Well, a lot of people loved it. It really took off. I had 42 people, which was an interesting thing to tackle the first time you do one of those by yourself. But at the end, when I did a final debrief, one woman stood up and she said, she was small and Danish and very firm. She said, "We did not like this. We thought that you would tell us the future of software testing. You are the expert. We expected you to tell us." And I thought, well, honey, if I could do that, I wouldn't be standing here. I'd be writing books of prophecy or something. But
That it
so
reminds me
that
what
always
uh, I gave a
always
talk.
happened.
I gave a talk in it was Star East a while ago, like early 2000s, about outsourcing and the impact it was going to have on the software testing industry and all this kind of stuff. And just not that it was going to have a big impact on skills and labor arbitrage and da, da, da. And anyway, the feedback, what I still have the card from it. I got it laminated. It said, "I've never seen somebody who has worked in this industry so long, who has learned all the wrong lessons from his career." I'm just like that.
Wonderful.
I absolutely love that feedback. I've learned nothing.
That was splendid. Actually, my favorite feedback was from a talk I gave at a task, Toronto Association of Software Quality, and they had dinner talk after dinner talks,
Mm.
and the comment one of the comments I got back was, "We did not like the dessert." Okay.
That's great. This isn't the suggestion box, pal. You can give that to the hotel. I did not
Right.
like the dessert.
So I want to go on to the topic of ethics because it's something that I'm most kind of engaged with at the moment and talking about.
Yeah.
And it was something, again, that was in that keynote I didn't quite give at ATD, um, where I talked about engineering and the fact that, people call themselves software engineers, they call themselves test engineers. But in my country, and I think in a lot of other countries, an engineer is a very specific term
Yes.
that applies to a very specific discipline. And a very important part of and licensing. And a very important part of that discipline is a code of ethics.
Mm.
And you violate that code of ethics, you lose your license.
Yep.
We don't have anything like that in software development.
No.
We have codes of ethics, but it often comes as a huge surprise to people to hear about them. And I find that unconscionable.
Yeah,
I, I wrote a little thing a while ago that I called, and I did it for a keynote at Nordic Testing Day. Um, 10 plus one commandments for ethical software testers. And I kind of turned it around and made it for techies generally because I think it applies. But I based it on going through the ACM, the American Association for Computing Machinery Code of Ethics, and the BCE Code of Ethics.
right.
And the codes of ethics are out there.
Yeah.
Very few people are aware of them.
But
Very
aren't
few
they?
people.
I mean, I always so I've spoken and written about this as well, and really feel like particularly where we are now from an industry and technology perspective, it gets overlooked a lot. I those codes of ethics that you're talking about, though, they're more voluntary, right? I mean, you don't see like a company signing up to that. So particularly, and this is one of the differences, I draw a line with enterprise tech is that like, the ethics is context driven, right? So it's more what's legal and what you sign up to for that individual company. You know what I mean? I feel like it's as much cultural as it is outline. I don't You don't have to sign up to a code of ethics to, sell software that people can use, right? So I feel like although those models are out there, I personally haven't seen a company apply them.
No, I haven't either. When I worked for IBM, I mean, we did have IBM does have a code of ethics for employees,
Hmm.
and protect. And I'm not sure whether there was a particular one for people in global services, which means that in the consulting wing. But we had to do a training module every year on the code of ethics
Sure.
and
Why
essentially some
work
software.
now? It's loaded with, I have to do attestations every quarter. There's training and all sorts about ethical
Yeah.
behavior.
So that stuff is there
Mm,
in some companies, but no, it's not like and CAST, sorry, the AST, the Association for Software Testing,
hmm.
had long ago, in fact, at its formation, I think, adopted the ACM Code of Ethics.
Yeah.
Although when I was doing the Nordic Testing Days talk, I went back to them and said, I see this is on your website, but are you aware that there's been an update? They weren't, and they added it,
Damn
and that's great.
testers
Yeah.
checking things.
So yeah, I mean those things are there, but there's no obligation, and that's why, and we are still a very young. I I'm not going to call this a profession, craft,
Yeah.
uh, a very young business, if you like,
Yeah.
and we haven't matured to that point
No.
of understanding that there are impacts of what we do,
Yeah.
and that we have to be aware of those.
And I see it as kind of there's two aspects to it to me. There's one, testers aren't aware of, like, either through ignorance or willful omission, the ethical responsibility of working in quality and testing. There's one thing that I think that we do have a responsibility towards that. That's part of what objectivity is about, and providing that advice and guidance to a project about what's actually happening on their project requires integrity and other ethical, positions you have to take. And there's a yeah, I'm continually, I guess, shocked but not surprised how little testers read about our business or understand about what the framing of all this stuff. So they just either don't know about it or want to be liked by the project and don't want to be viewed as preventing things from going releases happening or causing problems. And I see that it's a big issue when I work and train with testers is they just want to be liked and be seen to be helping contribute to something, and view those types of stuff like bug advocacy or taking an ethical position on something as preventing them from being out of sync with the project. But there's that side to it, which I see kind of in a project as a problem, ethical challenges for testers. Then there's the broader, like, what the hell are we building these days? I mean,
Well,
I gotta be
exactly.
honest, it's like sometimes it feels rather existential of the stuff you can do now with technology and just how pervasive it is in people's lives that
Yeah,
there we have some real serious problems that some of it I feel like it's the water's over the bridge. It's just
yeah.
I don't even know what to do about it some days.
I mean, I started out in library automation, and I got really excited about software, and I fell in love with software. And part of me is still in love with software, although there's a considerable amount of disillusionment at this point. But I saw software as something that would enhance people's creativity, that
Mm,
would free them to do the creative things.
yeah.
But what we have done with software is we have constrained people's lives.
Mm,
So, you look at the work that someone does and you break it into tasks. And it's the tasks that you automate and you think that's the whole job. And after a while, if it's pushed hard enough and it's entrenched hard enough, it becomes the whole job. And all of the tacit knowledge, if you like, and the creativity is ripped out. It
right.
just is, it dies, it withers. And I feel like we've done that to so much of human life and human endeavor
Hmm.
that it's terrifying. And I also think, there's everybody going gung ho over all these stupid LLMs, and I try not to be a complete curmudgeon about it, but
Go
but
on.
for heaven's sake, here is stuff, and yes, it's really impressive software.
Mm,
That's what it is. It's software.
mm,
And it's software that's operating on a basis of stolen data,
mm.
which has been uh, moderated, which has been cataloged by people, horribly exploited people
Mm.
who
Horrible.
are forced to look at, everything from images of child pornography and everything else to do that. So first of all, there is a man behind the curtain.
Yeah,
This is
absolutely.
not, it's not fully automated, folks.
Yeah.
There's a lot of human effort that goes into compiling all of that. So we got stolen data. It's being moderated by exploited workers. Um, it burns half the planet every time you put in a query.
Yep.
Uh,
Have
and
you read the AI Con, the Emily Bender's book?
I've read part of it. I haven't finished it, but
Yeah,
yes.
you're right on the main threads there. It's
And
shocking
it's
the
spitting
history of
out,
this.
it's spitting out sometimes useful answers for people, but it doesn't know anything that people haven't already known,
Mm, you're
you know?
exactly right.
It I don't get it. I don't get the fascination. And I certainly don't get the personification
Yeah.
and the pretense that it is somehow human or approaching being human or any of that stuff. And I look at this and I see, excuse me, people I know to be ethical people otherwise who are going gung ho on this stuff. And I think, what the hell are you doing?
Yeah.
We
Yeah.
know all of these things. We know that it's been built into predictive policing that discriminates horribly against people.
Yeah.
It's been built into everything from mortgage qualifiers to the criminal justice system, where people are denied parole based on discriminatory historical data.
Yep.
It's denying people benefits
Healthcare in the
based on what
US.
may be good or bad criteria.
Yep.
The applications of it in many ways have been horrible.
Hmm.
There's good AI out there. We know that. Robotic surgery.
Mm. Yeah.
There's really, really cool stuff. But what we are calling AI, what is AI in the popular imagination at the moment, and I include the tech population,
Yeah.
is large language models.
Yep.
and
100.
they are limited. Half of what, not half, but what they spit out could be very, very wrong.
Mm.
And you are having to do a hell of a lot of work to get to use them productively.
Yeah, and every
Why
time
bother?
I think we violent agreement about that, and I feel like that was really the intent all along. You've got like a tech community and a VC community and a private equity community, and these big banks really, and I don't want to put my tinfoil hat too hard, but like this, it's they're just out there saying it. You know what I mean? It's by design. You know what I mean? And when I hear about people saying like the Salesforce guy, oh yeah, we've laid off all these people because of AI and like or what Meta's like 30% of our code is written by AI now. One, I don't believe that.
I
And
don't know.
I don't believe that at all. If the people who are in tech are like, yeah, no, you're not. And then the other thing is that, like, if they're firing all these people because of that, this is just yet another excuse to lay people off, to claw back money, to do whatever they need to do to get investment or justify their valuations, which they've been doing since as long as I've been in this business. Every year we would lay people off in banking or cut roles that didn't exist in the first place to make it look like we were laying off people or managing our headcount. And to me, there's nothing that I've seen that's so fantastical or problem solving that justifies any of this money being thrown at it other than
Yep.
for really nefarious purposes.
Yep. And then we're going to put it in charge of, the nuclear weapons or whatever.
Yeah.
I remember when Boston Dynamics came out with this isn't it's not large language model. This is a different kind of AI and robotics, but
Mm.
Boston Dynamics came out with the robot dog. And I used one of their ads in one of my talks about the dysfunction of ubiquitous tech. Because there it was extremely creepy.
Mm.
It
Hmm.
was intended to the ad was intended to make this thing look cute.
Yeah.
Well, it wasn't cute. It was creepy to me, and it was to, I think, a lot of people. But Boston Dynamics said, it would never be made available to police forces or to armies. Well, guess what? They got bought.
Yep.
It's being used in China, in crowd control. It's
New York.
yes,
There's those
yes,
dogs
in New
walking
York.
around New York.
Yeah, I've seen articles on how to get loose from one
Mm.
if it grabs you. Uh, there is nothing we can build we cannot corrupt,
Mm.
that we
Absolutely.
cannot use in ways that really damage people, that really damage society. So why the hell are we building things with that potential?
Yeah.
When we build things like air tags,
Yeah.
these lovely little things that are almost unnoticeable that track. Well, that's great if my luggage goes missing, I suppose. It's not great if you slip it under the carpet of uh, the car belonging to the woman you're stalking,
Yeah.
or or slip it into her handbag. Why are the people building these things not thinking of the
Yeah.
ways in which they can be used to hurt people?
Well, I mean, to a certain extent, I think the people who are paying for it all, so like Larry Ellison is just saying the quiet part out loud these days. He's saying things like surveillance society.
Yep.
He's like, we won't have to worry about crime because we're gonna know where everybody's doing all the time and we're gonna be watching everything.
Yep.
This is what richest guy on the planet is t talking about. So I think some of this stuff is built that way, and the rest of
Yep.
us gotta live. You know what I mean? There's like you got job, you gotta eat, you got job. I don't know, like collectively some, strike or something to try and stop some of this, but like I just one the powerful combination of people not knowing about it or thinking about it, and you've gotta eat. You know what I mean? You gotta I don't know where this that's the other thing I think about with AI is like, where's this all gonna end? When you lay off all these people, who's gonna be doing what to pay for whatever you're now selling, which is embedded
Who's
from
going to buy
AI
your
because everybody's broke.
Yeah, who's going to buy your goods? I mean,
Yeah.
the net the net result of you throwing everybody out of work is everybody starving.
Yes,
I'm
exactly.
sorry,
So
folks.
without like
This is
UBI or
not
something,
compute.
what's
This is not an economy that works.
yeah, exactly. Exactly. And the other thing that depresses me about it is like, I'm endlessly disappointed by the software testing industry. The response from us has just been, yeah, let's just AI everything. You won't be replaced. You'll be replaced by a tester with AI and all this kind of nonsense. And I've seen a lot of demos, read specs, and stuff like there is they are still the test engineering automation world is still trying to count to infinity and trying to show you how they can count to infinity. And they keep trying to sell me, oh, well, I could write you 100,000 test cases and we'll be up there. Why do I
That's
need you?
useful.
They can't tell me why I need that, And so
Yeah.
I'm not afraid of that part, but it's just disappointing the response our community has, where you either got the complete nut jobs who are talking about oh, your tester buddy is going to be your new thing, you know what I mean? Or, just the endless test case nonsense generation, So I'm just disappointed eternally with how our business responds to these things.
Well, if you go back to what I think of our first principles, testers are people who are paid to tell the truth
Mm,
as they see it. I mean, but a large part of that job is working hard to discern what really is the truth.
yeah,
Testers are paid to think. Uh, well, what are you doing?
yeah,
You know, just grabbing a tool and the tool becomes the job? I don't think so. And
yeah,
and and a tool is not your buddy. It's not your co-pilot. It's not your anything because it's not human.
right,
It's not, it doesn't think. It's software. That's all it is. And we know what software is. I
yeah,
mean, there's great software and there's bad software and there's very complex and very interesting software. It's still software.
right,
It's something made by a human.
yeah,
So why do you let it take
yeah.
you over?
Well, I mean, going back to your, you know, point about ethics in this, I mean, what would your advice be to somebody, who finds themselves in a situation like this where there's something unethical going on, or they want to, because the crackdown on whistleblowing, and I've been involved in some pretty serious, like 3 times in my career I've been involved in some pretty serious whistleblowing cases that involved external entities type of stuff with some of the banks that I've worked for. And the crackdown on whistleblowing has just gotten more and more intense over the years. What would be your advice to somebody who finds themselves in this kind of dilemma?
First of all, whistleblowing is the nuclear option.
Mm,
Okay. Don't go there if you can possibly avoid it because there's no safe way to do it.
mm,
Unless you can do a sort of deep throat and be completely anonymous. Um, but even that has its hazards. Uh, I think people, well, I'll go back to the sort of 10 plus one commandments. And one of them is understand the risks. Understand the risks to you and understand your own tolerance for risk. And that includes your familial obligations and everything else. It includes also your self-respect.
mm,
And when you look at risk, you need to look at both sides. You need to look at what might happen if I take an action, what might happen if I don't take an action, and kind of weigh the balance there. Um, there are some situations which are simply untenable, and you have no choice. You need to get out. But there are lots of situations, and that another one of those first principles is that testers are people who ask questions. Keep asking questions. Keep asking, why are we doing this? Is this the right thing to do?
mm,
Um, why, for example, are we collecting location data if we're not using it? Why are we not using a standard like privacy by design?
right.
those things, which are really important. So there's a lot I think that people can do at a much more daily, mundane level
All right.
than blowing the whistle. And sometimes just asking the questions can be enough to help sort out a situation because the people around you don't realize what the implications might be.
Yeah.
Uh, you know, I don't think we can stop the world from going to hell in a handbasket. It's doing it, and you know, because I'm old, I'm that's my
Thanks, Fiona. That made me feel
that's my
good.
message about the world. But we can do a lot to slow it down. We can do a lot to maybe change direction. I think we can only do what we can do.
Yeah.
We don't beat ourselves up about it, but we don't also let ourselves be trampled or trample ourselves because we're frightened.
Yeah. Fair enough. Um, so look, where are you gonna be out and about these days? What are you working on these days? Where are you gonna be? I know we talked about ATD. What you got on your plate for the next 6 to 12 months, or where you gonna
That's
be? Where
about
can
it.
people how can people find you?
They can find me on Blue Sky. I'm still marginally on whatever it's called now, X, but only marginally. My website is crap, so don't go there except unless you see
I wasn't
because
gonna say anything, but we might need a lick of paint.
no, it needs dynamite and to be replaced. It was built a long time ago, 2007, in what are now obsolete Adobe tools.
Okay.
I can't even update the content. I can't change the photographs. I can't do anything with it.
Right.
So so I so every once in a while I sit down with WordPress and I start to construct something new and then I get bored with that and I stop. So
Right.
so I think probably I am just going to dynamite it and take it down. And just
There's
keep a blog.
probably an app for that.
Yeah, just keep a blog up or something. Besides, I'm paying the host far too much money. So no, don't go to my website unless you want to read old articles.
Okay.
Um, there's my blog. As I said, I'm doing agile testing days. I'm talking with some people about maybe doing something in May, but that's about it. I'm semi-retired.
Okay.
Uh, um,
You're pretty active on LinkedIn too. I enjoy your commentary and posts.
yeah, so I guess retain the fun of being a gadfly. But otherwise, I have a standard poodle. I walk a lot. I swim. I sing in two choirs, and I'm a gardener. So, and I'm co-chair of my local community association, and we just won a big fight to prevent a football stadium from being built
Yay.
in a local park. So, I'm pretty active on other levels than. And a long time ago, I said there is more to life. No, there is more to software development than testing, which I felt was something that needed to be said in the testing community at the
Mm.
time. But there is also more to life than software development. And I'm kind of moving on to the other things.
Yeah, well, you've had an amazing career, and I think, I still have a lot to learn from you, and I'm looking forward to seeing what else you come up with. Now, and it'll be fun to actually get to talk and hang out in Germany.
Sure.
I don't know how long you're going to be there, but I'm literally just going to listen to the talks and hang out, and
Yeah.
rarely do I get to go. I did the same thing at Test Bash. Rarely do I get to go to just listen to what people have to say as opposed to speaking or participating in some way. So I
Well,
guess
you're up as a coach too, right? So,
yeah, I'm listed as a coach. I haven't had a lot of uptick on that yet. So, I frankly, I don't really even know all what it means. So,
no, I know. I got one bite on that, and I want to talk to them to see if I'm really the right person, in fact, for what the problem they're trying to solve. But
yeah, I had the same thing. They contacted me and said, "Well, what about this?" And I said, "Well, I need to know this, this, this." And they said, "Okay, well, somebody else is going to do it." I'm like, "Okay." I wasn't saying no. I was trying to
right.
qualify what the hell you want to talk about. So,
Yeah.
yeah. All right, great. Well, Fiona, thank you so much. I really appreciate it, and it was a fun chat. Lots in there, and
But
I will painfully go through and footnote everything so people can get to the links. But thanks so much. I appreciate it.
thank you, Keith.
Okay, we'll speak soon.
Right. Ciao.
Cheers. Bye.